everyone, it's Shelby here. Welcome back to A Little Literary Love. I'm glad you're there with me today. Today's video is going to be my November mid-month wrap-up. I can't believe it's already over halfway through November. As I'm filming this, it is Thanksgiving week, so this will go up after Thanksgiving, but I'm still reading, but it's still like slow going with my reading. I read 5 books in the beginning half of November, and it's been actually a pretty good like reading bit. I feel like I read another potentially favorite for the year, so I'm really excited to talk about it. So we're gonna get right into it, and hopefully this video won't be too long. So first book that I read for November, I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is actually more of a YA fantasy, which is not usually my realm. I heard there was a little bit of romance in this, so that's why I read it, and one of my friends absolutely loves this book, so I picked it up. So this is kind of more a war book. It gave me like World War I/World War II vibes. There's this war that's going on, and humans are fighting this war in the name of these gods, but then these gods are like, they remind me a little bit of like Greek mythology kind of thing, but these gods are actually like around, and there was this like fight between these gods or something, so the humans are like fighting in the name of the gods. Anyway, so our heroine, she is a journalist, or she's like hoping to be a journalist. She's writing news articles and obituaries for this newspaper, and there's this guy that also writes there, and they are rivals. And then when she goes home, though, like after work, she has this typewriter that she's been like typing things out to, and she discovers that this typewriter is magical, and she starts sending these letters back and forth to this person, which you find out is actually the guy that she's rivals with. So I gave this one 4 stars. I thought this was really good. It is definitely not what I was expecting. It is very, 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 very light on the fantasy and the magicalness. It is mostly a historical war story is what it feels like, because then our heroine is her brother is fighting in the war, and she hasn't heard from him, so then she's trying to go and find him and find out what happens to him. And in the meantime, her and her rival start to kind of form a little bit of a romance. Definitely read like a YA book. There's no steam in this whatsoever. I understand why people really enjoy this book, but it just wasn't necessarily like what I crave, because I usually crave more like adult stories. But I gave it 4 stars because it is really good. It does end on a cliffhanger, so I do really want to read the second book, which is supposed to come out in December. Then I read Phantom by Greer. This is the first book in her Tattered Curtain series, which I think all of these books in the series can be read as standalones. This is a dark romance, and this is basically a Phantom of the Opera retelling. So we have our heroine, her father was killed, and it kind of starts her in this depressive episode and then becomes like a manic episode, and she realizes after this that she has bipolar disorder, and then she gets accepted into this like arts academy in New Orleans, and she's performing at this like opera house in New Orleans, and she gets these letters from this mysterious phantom person. So it's very, very Phantom of the Opera, except in this story it's set in New Orleans, and the Phantom and Raoul kind of character, if you've ever seen the movie Phantom of the Opera, are from these like dueling families in New Orleans. It's kind of like mafia-esque because they like own the town, and there's a lot of stuff going on with that. So it's got elements of that to it. But in this story, Phantom actually gets the girl, which I loved. I really loved this one. I gave this 4.5 stars. I'm kind of leaving it there, contemplating like how I feel about it. I might bump it up to 5 stars, or I may just leave it at 4.5 stars. But I really enjoyed this. This was everything I wanted in a Phantom of the Opera retelling, especially like a modern day one where Phantom gets the girl. There's lots of kinky stuff in here. It is very dark, but I also really, really loved the mental health representation with our character, our main female character, having bipolar disorder. And there's a note at the beginning of this book that the author also suffers from bipolar disorder. So I really enjoyed reading that in a character. I really think there should be more mental health representation in books, because honestly, I feel like a lot of people suffer from mental health disorders, and it's kind of just like put on the rug, like hush hush. So I really enjoyed that. Steam on this is very high. There are lots of trigger warnings for like murder. When the Phantom when he was younger, was kidnapped and tortured, so there's trigger warnings for that. But it was a really good book, and I can't wait to read more from this series, because she also has, I think, a Moulin Rouge one and then a Sweeney Todd one, and I love all of those. I love musicals, so I can't wait to dive into those. I'm so excited. Then I read Burn With Me, which is the first book of the Gods of Hazelwood Icarus series, which actually is just a duology by Lucy Smoke. This is another dark romance. This is about our heroine. Her mother is not the greatest mother. She just winds up getting married to like all these men, and so her mother calls her up and is like, hey, I got married, so on to dad number whatever it is. So she meets this guy, has reservations about him, doesn't really care for him, finds out that her new stepdad has a son, and that they are going to be going to the same college together. So this ends up turning into a little bit of a bully romance, because the son is wanting to try to push her away and get her and her mother to not be with his dad. So like to get her mother to divorce his dad and not be around anymore. And you kind of along the way later on in the story kind of find out a little bit more why, but there's definitely tension between her and her new stepbrother, so this does turn into a step sibling romance. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. I thought this was kind of meh. I didn't really care for the bully aspect, and I don't know, I kind of got lost in the story with that. I did really like the tension between our two characters, this like hate to love, enemies to lovers kind of thing that was going on, but it was just overall, and then the sexy scenes were quite sexy, but otherwise it was just kind of meh. And then I did also read the second book of this duology, Fall With Me. So we find out in this one why he was trying to push her away, and you find out that his father is a much darker and sinister kind of character, and does some questionable things, some very not good things. So our female character, our heroine, finds out about some of these things, and she decides she's going to take it upon herself to take him down on her own, even though his son is also trying to take him down on his own. So they're not really communicating the best in this. I gave this one 3 stars. I just thought this overall was really meh. I didn't really care for the storyline. I also didn't really care for the romance with this. It didn't really feel believable, because these characters really like hate each other, and then it's just like they're getting together for this like common goal, and it's kind of like, well, you're already there, so I guess I'm gonna be with you. Like, there's several times when they're having their like sexy scenes together that it's very much dubious consent. Some of it bordered on like non-consent, which I'm kind of meh on. It just depends on the situation, but it was very several times where she keeps telling him no, and he's like, oh, you'll like it anyway. And then it says in her mind what she's thinking. She's like, oh, I actually kind of like this, but she doesn't actually say it out loud. So I didn't really care for that. I just don't really understand. It just wasn't very believable that they fell in love. So that was my issue with it. And then the last one that I read for the beginning of November is going to be Twisted Heathens by J. Rose. This is the first book in her Blackwood Institute series. I think this is a trilogy. This is another dark romance. This is about our heroine. She is in a mental institution. And she is getting transferred to the Blackwood Institute, which is kind of like taking a mental facility and combining it with like a boarding school / academy. So they have all these patients here, but they combine it with like they have classes that they go to get an education. It's like this experimental thing, but our heroine in this doesn't really care about anything. She just has this main goal in mind. This is not really a me book. There are many, many, many trigger warnings, and I would not recommend this to many people. The plot was kind of meh. There wasn't really too much of a plot to us, except for the fact that our main heroine is wanting to kill herself. So definitely trigger warnings for suicide attempts, suicide ideation. There is drug use in this. This was just like a huge train wreck for me, and I kept reading because I was just like, where is this going? Yeah, so I gave this 3 stars because I don't think it's necessarily a bad book. I just don't know if this subject matter and how it was handled was great for me. I don't know. I didn't really care for it. I didn't really like any of the characters. They're very unlikable. So this is also a reverse harem. She meets several guys, and one of the guys, it kind of, I'm assuming, turns into a second chance because she was with him before and he caused some terrible like mental, like it was a very toxic kind of relationship. And that's kind of what it feels like for a good majority of this. Like all of these characters are very broken. They have tragic pasts. There's lots of stuff going on. They all suffer from mental health disorders. And it's just a lot. And like I said, I don't know if this is the best way to handle that and to go about that. And I also just really didn't care for that the whole plot and our heroine's main goal is to commit suicide. That just didn't really like sit well with me, and that's just not really something that I want to read. So I can see where certain readers could identify with certain aspects of this if, you know, they have suffered from certain things like that our heroine suffers from or that any of the heroes suffer from. But yeah, it just doesn't work for me. But I feel bad lowering my rating because I don't know, I didn't think that this writer was necessarily a bad writer. I just didn't really care for the subject matter that was talked about. So I feel like it's not a me kind of book. I thought about, I may try one of her other books because I know she's got a sapphic romance, I believe. So I might try that and see if I like it any better, but I'm not the biggest fan of that one. So that's going to be it for all the books that I read for the beginning of November. If you like this video, please make sure to hit the thumbs up button. Leave a comment down below with some of the books that you've been enjoying in November. You know, leave me some books that I should definitely add to my ever-growing TBR list, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. Otherwise, I will see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.